Okay, thank you. I take it that the sound and the screen share is all okay?
It's all okay. It's perfect. It's audible. Thank you very much.
Okay. 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 Thank you very much for everyone for joining in and sparing about an hour for going through this very interesting concept that I have developed over the last few years. This is based on research from various scholars across the globe, and and when I say conflicting thoughts, in our mind we have a specific lens, the lens we look at, the lens we look through at the world around us. So things happen, we perceive those things, and we react. When things happen to us or things happen around us, they might be beyond our control, and they generally are, in personal life and in business. However, how we react to those is all up to us. The great thing about that is we have full control. The bad news is we are generally unaware of our default responses. Today we are going to go through 3 key sections: what the conflicts are, how different models of responsible conflict resolution have been developed and what they say about those things, and the maturity level of humans on reacting to the conflicts a bit better. And then we'll go through an extension that I have recently researched and published. So thanks, Ali, for the beautiful and comprehensive overview. So I won't go into any of the details of my past experience. Okay, let's jump into it quickly.
Let me
understand what intelligence.
No, it's sorry to interrupt, but let me quickly ask if everybody can see the screen of Mr. Khwaja. Say yes in the box. So please proceed. Sorry for this interruption. Everybody can see it. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So living in this digital world, the rate of change has been increasing, and the pace has changed completely over the last 10 years. Can you imagine the publications in this world? Comparing the last 100 years, what has been published in the last 10 years is more than the last century. And that cycle is increasing. So what will be published in the next 5 years will be more than the last few centuries. And then the cycle will increase even further. Because of these digital tools and technologies and the devices and the availability and accessibility and the globalization, I use this word globalization to show that now the world is really a global village. Everybody can access anything, anywhere, anytime. And it's all dependent on how we perceive things. So with that in mind, consider this. The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold 2 opposing ideas in our mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. try to imagine two opposing ideas, keeping that in mind, maintaining them, having those two opposing ideas in our mind, and then still having the ability to function, meaning still taking the rational decision and making sense out of those things. That's the standard of a first-rate intelligence. And that's not me, that was a research done and a beautiful saying by Scott Fitzgerald. For us, it's very easy. Our life, our day-to-day life is generally one aspect of our personality. When we go home, that's one thing, and when we go to work, we are another personality. And then we are with friends, that's another personality. And then we are with different environments, make us different human beings. And if we can manage those different ideas and still function properly, that's the basic foundation of our intelligence. However, when we really understand multiple answers to the same question, and then having those opposing multiple answers in mind, and then making a rational decision, that is the intelligence. So let's try to develop what that is. In corporate world, responsibility is taken as a synonym of accountability. Now there is a key and a subtle difference, and that has caused a lot of chaos. There's a multi-billion-dollar industry around creating accountability in organizations, having hierarchies and bureaucracy and all sorts of controlling mechanisms to make sure that the next layer of responsibility is controlled and measured. If we just focus on accountability, we will never get high results. And that's why the growing and the successful organizations in this world, right now and in the past, they have all been focusing on responsibility rather than accountability. Let me clarify what that difference is. Being accountable is just like having a speed camera on the traffic, so on the road, and we're going through the highway and we see a speed camera van. If we slow down, seeing that van, we were just accountable. What that means is we followed the rules when somebody was looking. We could only respond to the requirements of a system when we were monitored. That means whenever there is no van, there is no camera, we take our liberty and violate the law or speed up than the defined limits. Now, why are the limits there in the first place? They are for our safety. So why do we break them? Why do we break that speed limit? Just for fun? Or are we getting late or something we give higher priority to? What could be more of a higher priority than our safety of us, of our family, and of other people, and of other people's families who are on the road? If we feel responsible, we will not violate that speed limit. And that's a simple analogy. Responsibility is you maintain the accountability with love, with care, by focusing on why things are done rather than what they are. Okay? Some people challenge the requirement for wearing a seat belt, and it's the same thing. If you only wear a seat belt when you see a police van who will give you a ticket, that means you're just accountable. Being responsible means you understand that this is for your own safety and for the betterment of the whole society and the community and the safety of the families and the whole overall bigger picture. So being responsible is very, very important and inevitable for being a good citizen and a good member of the community, and in the corporate world, good member of a team. So what's the difference between accountability and responsibility in corporate world? Accountable means I give you a piece of work, you give me an estimate, and I track your estimate and say you said you'll do it in 6 months, your team did not deliver, so you will not get any more funding, or let's give you a little bit more funding and see if you can do it this time, and then you control more. There could be genuine reasons, dependencies across multiple teams, and that results in a conflict in the corporate environment quite often. A simple example would be a team's deliverable is dependent on another team's output. So you must have been through a scenario in your professional or personal life where you were not responsible to another team and the other person or team was not responsible to you. Still, your delivery was dependent on their delivery. So unless you did it together and in time, the overall project would suffer. Unless we take that responsibility mindset into the corporate world, there is an inherent blame culture. And that's what we want to talk about today. Before that, we go into that now we have the context ready. Let's go through a quick activity to wake all of you up. If you can type an answer or your suggestion or what comes to your mind when you see this picture. What does this iceberg have to do with the conflicts? What comes to your mind? Please type it in the chat window. What does this picture have to do with the conflicts? And this could be a conflict in your personal life, professional life, anywhere.
Okay, we are starting receiving from Sister Sybil, hidden reasons behind the conflict. So far, just one comment. Abdul Aziz wrote this. This might suggest that there are deeper things in a conflict than the obvious ones.
Okay, so gather the rest and I'll start discussing on what we've received till now. So yes, they are spot on. The conflicts we encounter in our daily lives, they are all rooted somewhere else. The symptoms appear to be very straightforward, but the real root cause possible for creating a conflict that has a symptom that somebody else is offending us. We might be the reason for the conflict while we are blaming somebody else for the situation. And that's why we need to understand why we think in those terms, what can we do to react and to make sure that we respond to conflicting situations with an open mind and a positive, responsible approach. I'll move on, Ali, unless you have some more.
On Naveed.
Okay. So moving on to the second session. Okay, that's fine. So responsible conflict resolution. Let's go through the model on how some famous methodologies exist right now in the corporate world, and they have been developed over the decades, last few decades, and they have been used to help us understand the psychological model of how the blame and the conflict resolution model works. So consider the scenario. You walk down from the bathroom, you get ready, and you've done the breakfast quickly. You grab a sandwich and just about to run to the car because you're getting late from a meeting in the morning at home, and you can't find the keys. What would your first reaction be? You are a family man. You came back last night a little bit late. You have children. When you came in, you met them well, you played with them, and you did not put the keys in the right place. However, in the morning, in a hurry, you start shouting. The first thing that you do is, who moved my keys? And it's generally a shouting rant on the family. In the morning, who was responsible for that? We sometimes deny that we are the problem. Sometimes we close our eyes that it could be us. And denial is generally the first reaction to our internal conflicts. And the simple analogy for that is an ostrich, when it feels danger, just puts its head in the ground, closing its eyes, assuming that if it can't see the problem Nobody else can see him. And that is the basic response we generally give. That denial does not help anyone, that does not help resolve any conflicts, and just creates the situation worse. So from denial, a little bit of maturity takes us to the blame culture, which is actually inculcated by our schooling systems. So we have been tuned with our education systems and the society generally, blame on others. When things go wrong, it is generally the other person's fault. So instead of trying to find the root cause and seeing the, not depending on the symptoms, we blame others. We say, oh, it's his fault, it's their fault. And going back to that key analogy, if we've lost the keys, if we didn't put them in the right place, instead of really we start saying, oh, the children might have moved it. Oh, something might have happened, but it could never be us. And that blame is the default response for many people. And most of the corporate issues, the team challenges, stop there. One team blaming the other, saying, my project got delayed because I did not get my dependent project delivered on time. So the other team's delay caused a delay in my delivery. That could be true to an extent, but there is a better response. What we can do is we can justify. That happens quite often as well. So when you justify, in simple terms, from the key analogy, continuing with that, we justify, because I came in a bit late and there were guests at home, so I had to meet them, and that's why I couldn't put the key in the right place, and that's why I can't find it in the morning. So we're just justifying our mistake, but still not solving the problem. The justification we give for projects is a similar way. Oh, I am getting delayed because the other team is getting delayed. That was the blame, right? This response is, so what's the big deal? If my project is delayed, I won't put in the extra hours. Why? I don't want to help that team. Why is that? Oh, because they delayed their project deliverable last time, so we will respond and reciprocate their pain, a similar response, a negative response. And that justification does not help anyone. They find excuses in hurting others. When we go to the next level of maturity, sometimes it's all about shame. We say, oh, it's all my fault. We are useless. We can't do anything. All those things do not help anybody at all as well. What happens in this scenario is, oh, I'm so bad, I can't put the keys in the right place. I am used to being clumsy. So when I get back home, I can never put the keys in the right place. That could be okay as a statement, but unless you do something about it, this state does not help anyone. And same goes with the teams as well. In corporate, when some teams are known to be notorious and they never deliver on time. However, the project manager or the project lead or the division head, they'll stand up and say, oh, it was my team's fault. I'm so sorry. Implicitly what you're saying is, yes, we have been doing this consistently. Yes, we have been making the same mistakes over and over again, but we can't do anything about it. So you have to live with it. That shame mindset does not help the corporates as well. So the teams start struggling. The next stage of maturity takes you through obligation. So instead of taking things as a responsible citizen of a community, of a set of rules that we have agreed to, for example, the seatbelt example we started with, or the speed cameras, at home, it could be a rule that I have to put my keys in the keyhole or in the key rack, and unless I put that in, I cannot do anything. So other things start struggling. If we follow the seatbelt analogy here, it's more relevant. So if we just wear a seatbelt to avoid or to prevent us from getting the ticket or being caught by the police, that is not the right mindset. That means we are just being accountable for that. Unless there is a monitoring mechanism in place, we will keep violating. That means we are not doing it from the heart. The teams need to get maturity, and they need to react to those things and need to take responsibility of those things instead of treating these as obligations, because ultimately it's our benefit. Going back to the corporate examples, an obligation is one team has to deliver a project on time for the sake of overall project's progress. They treat the project plan as final, and living in this uncertain world, things go wrong. When things go wrong, if we still stick to the same plan without being reactive or being innovative in solving problems together, the overall project delivery would struggle. And I'll give those examples, go into those details later on a little bit. Okay. Going further from there, and this is the final step of a traditional responsibility matrix, is responsibility is our ability to respond. It's response ability. How do we respond to those challenging situations? Are we really taking ownership of the situation and trying to make the most out of it for the betterment of the wider community and for our own safety? For going back from the seatbelt example to the speeding example to the keys, and now coming to the corporate world. The responsibility is in a corporate world. So one team, so let's say there are two teams and they're delivering some huge deliverables for a big project, a multi-million project they have signed up to deliver in a year. Now they are dependent on each other's deliverables, and one team delays for some reason, for an external reason, one team cannot deliver or make to that schedule. If I am dependent on that team's deliverable, what can I do to help them to help me? What that means is, instead of blaming them, instead of justifying, instead of being shameful, we can collaborate, we can find ways of helping that team deliver on time so that we can deliver the whole project as a team and achieve our objectives. That's the mindset that we need in the corporates. Unfortunately, that does not exist right now. What happens right now is the teams stop at the blame stage or they justify. The responsibility is not felt by the teams because there are wrong incentives in place. And if we can develop this skill in our teams, it could change the whole mindset of the organization, and ultimately you can see timely delivery and higher or speedy time to market. So having explained the traditional scenarios, let me build it up a little bit on how I have extended that from religious point of view as well, because Quran tells us about how to solve this problem. So that they will do good to us, that is still a limited mindset. Okay, that's in corporate world concept of CSR, and I'll come to that as well. Before that, let's do one more activity. What does this remind you? What can go wrong if there is a conflict between one of the team members on this boat? Can you type in your answers on the chat box? So what if this team is trying to travel and there is a conflict between one of them?
The speed will change.
Okay, good. So while others type, I'll just comment on that. Yes, that is definitely right. The flow will change. Now what happens is, if one of them goes out of sync, it will have a negative impact on the whole team. So if there is a dependency of the whole team, so the whole team's direction, so like consider these as 4 different projects for the same deliverable, for a big, huge corporate project, and each person on this board represents the project deliverable. If one of them slows down, the overall project will suffer. That means they will be out of sync. Even though everybody will be making an effort in the right direction, still the pace of one person will have an impact. So having a mindset of staying up, synced up, and thinking that I am part of a team, even though I am struggling, I need some help, still we need to work as a team, and the projects need to work as those teams in a responsible mindset. Okay, so let's quickly go through the definition of a very, very important concept in Islam. It's called, and I'll come to the word in a minute, but a life of this world, it is a road full of thorns. One who walks it needs to have extreme patience. Now, why do we need patience? Why is patience important? The model that we just went through, it was all about patience if you try to understand. So before blaming, we needed patience, because in a conflict situation, the default response of blame is lack of patience sometimes. There could be justification, a negative response for a negative action. Still need patience. There could be shame. If you're feeling shameful, have the patience to bear that shameful situation and do something positive about it. Again, obligation, if the managerial, the top leader is very, very strong, you still need patience and the resistance to handle challenging deadlines. Another example, when you are pricked by as little as a thorn in the worldly life and you see the reward, seek the reward from Allah, some of your sins will be removed because of it on the day of judgment. What does that, why am I talking about this? Quran mentions this word called Taqwa, and there is no simple definition of Taqwa. However, it's mentioned 258 times in the Quran in its different variations. Taqwa is the concept where you do good things to others, even though things might not be going the way we want them to go, and respond positively to them and do good to others, not for the sake of getting response from those people you're doing good to. You're doing it for the sake of Allah. You do everything with the cautiousness that this is for the sake of Allah. So we go to work, it's an ibadah. We deliver our projects on time with high dedication and full effort and sincere effort and sincere responsibility of how we can help others. It's again Taqwa. When we lock our car, it's Taqwa. If we are, so that's tawakkul, but the Taqwa is doing good to others for the sake of getting a response from Allah. Now in the Quran, chapter number 5, verse number 2, Allah Ta'ala says, and cooperate in righteousness and piety. Cooperate in righteousness and piety, but do not cooperate in sin and aggression, and fear Allah. Indeed, Allah is severe in penalty. Interestingly, if you notice, this is beyond the responsibility matrix. This is the next step, and that's why I have developed extended this model to add Taqwa on top of responsibility. But can you imagine, responsibility was that you did good to others so that they would do good to you. So they would reciprocate your positive action with a positive response. Taqwa is you do good to others and not expect reward from others. Now how does that relate to the corporate world? It's the same old CSR. From what I have understood till now, and my research shows that CSR is the corporate social responsibility, which stops at the responsibility level. When we say we stop at the responsibility level, that means the corporates are doing good for some other companies, but there is a string attached. They do good to others, they help other companies, but there is a hidden agenda behind them. And that's why CSR is a story of the past in the Western world already. If companies think they can do well and look good in front of the rest of the world by doing CSR and ticking all the boxes, they are mistaken, because the concept is diminishing very quickly. The response to this is the Taqwa, the economic model recommended by Islam, which is corporate social value. What value do you add to the society? What is the sincere effort you're doing for the betterment of the society? And from CSR, we need to go to this CSV, corporate social value. And you will see more and more initiatives where you do good to others for the sake of good, without expecting any response from the organization you're helping. If corporates go into that mindset, and when they go there, and many organizations are, they are seeing tremendous success, because you get sincere passion and energy from the society, very good response, internal satisfaction, motivated teams. The whole society benefits, and you can see they are sincere, and everybody loves them. And when they love them, they give them more business. So you did not tie any strings to your offerings of CSR. You went into the Taqwa mode, which is fearing God, doing good for the sake of good, and expecting reward from Allah only. Because when we add value and do good to the society, the ultimate response, a positive response, comes from Allah. Because other organization or other person might not be able to respond to our requests. So, and that leads to corporate social innovation as well, and that we'll talk about in another webinar someday, hopefully within this year, inshallah. I'm working on that, which is CSR is the thing of the past, CSV is the thing of the present, and CSI is the future. CSV and CSI are going to be the top initiatives from the corporates globally, inshallah, and that will bring back the betterment of the society by the business. So with that, I'll quickly summarize. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. If we think positively, not just following the rules for the sake of following the rules, we follow them because they are beneficial to us. We help others because Allah Ta'ala wants us to. We don't help others because we are expecting a response from them. We don't help our customers because they'll give us more business. We help our customers because we want to do something good, bring a positive change in their lives. We want to help them for the sake of helping. When we change that mindset, the whole society will benefit from the business, and there will be tremendous growth, because that is the lacking bit in the business. And with that, I'll go into the Q&A. Please type in your questions, and I'll actually hand it over to Ali.
Well, thank you very much. Folks, we are open for the Q&A. You could either raise your hand. There's a hand icon available on your webinar console, so I can give you a chance to speak directly to Brother Naveed Khwaja, or you could put your questions in the question box. Let me go to the question box, as I see a couple of questions already there. Being the first one, question is, realizing that some conflicts are inevitable at work, what is the trick to not to allow to let conflict go on forever?
Okay, so if I understand the question correctly, it's a necessary evil we are talking about. There could be some personality clashes, some team deliverables that are bound to create conflict in your organization, or even at home, or even in your friend circle or a social circle. There could be scenarios which you cannot avoid. For example, a typical answer to that, a typical scenario is, you can choose your friends but not your family, as this famous saying goes. So in that scenario, for example, if you have a continuous conflict with your loved ones or your family or somebody in the professional life who you cannot get rid of, they are your colleagues at the same level, the simplest thing is try to take that responsibility mindset and try to take that next step into Taqwa as well, which is, irrespective of what they have done in the past, it could be 100 justifications you can find to reciprocate their negativity with your own negative response. Try to change that. Try to think positive, do positive, to them and talk positive about it as well. Language plays a key role in these scenarios. If we use the right language, a positive language, instead of backbiting and slandering and complaining, if we can talk positive, only trying to find out good things about the others, you will see the positive response happening gradually. I'm not saying that happens immediately and 100% of the time, but that's the trick. We need to change our mindsets. We need to start from our heart, a positive initiative, talking good to others, even if we don't like the other personality, if we have challenges working together, even if we see they are sabotaging our work. Still, starting with this sincere thought that I'm going to do something positive to try and change the scenario. Let's try that approach and see. It can bear amazing results, and I've seen and experienced that throughout my professional life. I hope that answers the question.
Well, thank you. Let me move to a caller who has raised a hand. So let me see. We have Brother Mahmoud Sharaf. Can you hear us? Could you please introduce yourself and ask a question?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Could you please introduce yourself, where you're calling, and please ask a question?
This is Mahmoud Sharaf. I'm calling from Saudi Arabia from Ilaj Medical Group. My question is that do you suggest that we spend or we invest on those psychometric tests to understand ourselves, how others they look at us? Because part of your presentation that the way we look to things is different, and when we spend this time in learning about ourselves, does that help as part of the process to get rid of this conflict? Or you feel that we should not care about how the others they look to us, we just do it right and we focus on doing things right?
Okay, so thank you very much for the very nice question. I think it's very, very relevant. Knowing or trying to recognize how others look at us, or how others perceive our personality, it's very, very helpful. It's great to do that if we can do it. Unfortunately, we can never be 100% sure on how other people perceive and understand us. And interestingly, even if you do the psychometric testing, and there are so many nice tests available that give you quite a detailed 360 overview of how you look, what your strengths are and weaknesses, and conscientiousness and all the things, and how others perceive you. Still, unless you have a coaching mechanism in place within the organization, this will not bear any fruit. You can have hundreds of tests done for the whole corporate, for the whole organization. It will not change a single bit unless you have a positive culture in there, an open culture, and some outside coaches who are experienced in this counseling. What I mean by that is you need to get those professionals in to help you recognize how to hone those skills or the strengths in those personalities and improve the overall team morale. The motivation of the team depends on how the team members perceive each other and how the culture enables them to perform well. If the culture and the language of that organization is negative, recognizing the strengths or the perception of others will not be of any use, because you need to improve the language and the culture of the organization, and that does not happen in isolation. And that for us, we need to think outside our boxes that we have created and developed throughout our lives. So it's always good to have a fresh pair of eyes. I recommend, and actually so those organizations that you have engaged with,
yeah,
they will give you some kind of mentoring time as well. So never get this in isolation. If you want to get those tests done, great. However, you need to get some sessions individually and with teams in a normal day-to-day cycle. So unfortunately, what happens in our cultures, and I understand that from having worked in the South Asian region and those areas, is what happens in the training appears wonderful in theory, but when you try to apply that in practice, you struggle, and there is nobody to help you because everybody is struggling in the same way. And then you start blaming the psychometric results or the training itself. It's actually carrying that bucket across, trying to understand that this is a team effort and the whole culture change that will take time, and you need the coaches or mentors to solve your problem. So, yeah, I hope that gives you a bit of a clue. If it doesn't, just let's continue the conversation.
Okay, Brother Muhammad Sharif, I hope it's clear
Yes,
to you.
yes, it did. Yes, it did answer the inquiry, and I believe that as he's mentioning that it's it's the culture. We have to have this coaching skills. I agree with him. It's very important because to do the change you have to have that skills. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much for your asking the question, and let me move to the question box. We have another one from Brother Abdul Aziz. Question is, it happens sometimes that you admit your mistakes, but some bad people will take that as your weakness. Is there some way you can reconcile between satisfying your nafs and not give people to step over you? Interesting question.
Interesting question. Now, yes, and it happens all the time. It happens all the time, everywhere, not only in professional life, also in personal life. You would notice there are some people who start picking up on your honesty when you honestly accept that you made a mistake, and other people use that to their advantage at another time, which is very completely inappropriate. Now, to handle that, so honesty is definitely the best policy. However, the best thing is we learn from our mistakes. So if we made a mistake, a huge mistake, let's say it cost millions of pounds to the company, you lose that money, and you accept publicly in the team, in the company, that yes, we made a mistake. How you explain that to them and what have you done to prevent that in this organization? That is the key to success. Unless you do that, there is no point in accepting the blame, because or taking it all as a shame. If you're just saying, yes, we made a mistake, very sorry, that is not enough. The real definition of being sorry is, sorry, what happened was beyond my control and this should not have happened. However, I have done these 3 steps to make sure that we can prevent that in the future, and we have learned from it, and we will make sure that this never happens again. There's a huge difference in this approach and just taking the shameful, accepting the shame. Now, if people start taking advantage of your honesty, instead of responding to their negative thoughts or negative comments and help, because they'll keep reminding you of your mistakes. A simple example I can give you is, in a big corporate recently, there was a company director in a group of companies who made some decisions, and the company lost about $10 million in 1 year just because of those decisions. So the director, in their yearly company meeting, publicly said, I make those mistakes, I take responsibility, and I resign. And he was very sincere and had been working in the organization for about 10 years already, and was very good, known for his honesty and good work. So people knew that the rapport he had was very positive. Now the executive board called him in, and he said, who are you to decide to leave based on your mistakes? Who said you're leaving? You have made a mistake, that's fine. You will have to correct this with us, and we will have to help us prevent it so that we can all make better progress, learn from the mistake and move on. Now, generally the corporates are very brutal in that. You make a mistake, you're kicked out. The large sustainable organizations do not just kick off people. They see the value, the honesty and the integrity of that leader and the influence they have had on the organization. If you make a genuine mistake, that's a blessing for the organization. It could temporarily make a loss for the organization, but in the long run, you create a stronger team. You see that, okay, we are open to make some mistakes. We can even make a loss. In the long run, the company will benefit. And that's why I say honesty is the best policy. However, the approach has to be right. We do good to others for the sake of doing good and expecting response from Allah Ta'ala, not from the person you are being good to. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much. Another one from Spell. Rather, it's a comment, but needs your further comments. So actually, the thoughts we think within ourselves create the forces that surround us and drive our lives forward. Is that correct?
Partially, yes. I agree to most of what you've just mentioned. I would slightly disagree to the ending. The box that we create in our mind and the lenses we see the world with, we need to keep checking and cleaning them. Sometimes we are wearing the specific color of glasses and we'll use those lenses to look around and just accept everyone from the same perception. The world is different. Human beings are all unique and they have all different agendas, different ways of working and different passions and values. So we should always be open to those ideas of having to think outside the box. Whatever perception we have of the situation, we need to give the other party a chance. And not for the sake of getting benefit from them, but just for the concept of ihsan, the taqwa that we need. It's all to do with, yes, the other person can make a genuine mistake. Let's accept that and move on. Let's make sure that they do not make that mistake again, and let's help them not make the mistake again instead of just blaming them. From personality point of view, unless we have an open mind and accept that we can never be perfect and nobody can be perfect, that can have a profound impact on our approach and our relationships and the interaction with the teams. Okay, Ali?
Thank you. And there's an interesting comment on the meaning of taqwa. The comment is, taqwa means in simplicity that to guard yourself. So if, example, if you're driving a car and observe that a car in front of you has hit the brake, and if you don't hit the brake behind that car, then you're not in state of taqwa. That is, you're not being responsible in guarding yourself. That's an interesting.
Okay, so so my research and my understanding based on that is the word you're referring to is actually tawakkul. Tawakkul is tie our camel, do our best in our capacity and then leave it to Allah. Taqwa is fear of Allah with hope. If we understand the subtle difference between these two things, then we will definitely, when we hit that brake, we'll be following the tawakkul to make sure that we do what we can do and then leave it to Allah. So that's tawakkul. Taqwa is we make sure that we do good to others and we always expect the reward from Allah. Feeling that Allah Ta'ala is looking at us, He is seeing us all the time, and the strongest state of taqwa could be that we imagine that we can see Allah Ta'ala. That's why they say a stronger prayer is, the strongest prayer is if you are praying and you feel that Allah, you're looking at Allah Ta'ala. If you can't do that, assume that Allah Ta'ala is looking at you, and He actually is. It's that strength, the internal strength we need. Now for an atheist, that could be a completely useless concept, but ultimately you know what happens. If you are in an aeroplane and if it is about to fall, everybody will call Allah for help, God for help, irrespective of whether they believe in God or not. So from being a Muslim point of view, taqwa is one of the most strongest statements in the Quran, 258 times, and it cannot be defined simply. What you are saying is right as well. However, there is a deeper meaning and there are multiple meanings of taqwa. Everything boils down to whatever we do, it has to be for the sake of Allah because He is always looking at us. Okay,
True.
I hope that clarifies
my
understanding at least.
Just one last question. Thank you very much. The question, you mentioned teams need to take the responsibility and maturity for accepting the accountability. How can we as an organization inject that need as it differs from person to person?
So again, it comes down to the culture, because my focus has been on culture change, and I've seen so many organizations that, especially the financial organizations, they have a very strong blame culture. So because of the liabilities in those organizations, they are very used to using those words of, okay, so it wasn't my fault, it's more not my liability, and there's insurance mindset and all those things. If the society has that as a common term, and they are, I'll give you a simple example. So in America, in the US, if it snows and you don't clean your pathway and somebody slips on your pathway, they can sue you, and they will sue you. Now that's one kind of culture you can develop. On the other hand, in the Arab world, even if you hit a car, or even if you hit somebody and let's say there was no damage to the car, you just stand out, you say, okay, did anything happen? Oh, that's fine. Okay, you go. If that kind of, so that's a society kind of thing, right? When the insurances or this culture change is focused on insurance or depending on control systems to help you respond to conflicts, there's a completely different approach. Now so why I have mentioned those couple of scenarios, in corporate world, what happens is organizations sue each other. Oh, they didn't deliver the project on time. Oh, my team didn't deliver because you didn't deliver on time. And ultimately, a third party or supplier delayed our deliverable. So our organization is sued by another one, and we are suing the supplier. All those things happen quite often in the Western world. Now, the culture that we want to develop, and that is really sustainable and brings in the overall growth to the organization, it's all boils down to taking responsibility personally first. So we do good to others so that we can expect a reward from them. Meaning, when we do good to others, we are being positive and we are helpful to others' teams, they'll respond positively as well. How that happens is, in the culture, instead of appreciating or recognizing a blame mindset, for example, in a board meeting, there is a discussion on multiple projects, and one project director says, my projects are being delayed, I can't meet my yearly targets because that other director in the same room, he's not delivering on time. So that's a blame statement. A different approach could be that we are struggling with this, we want resources to be able to collaborate and help each other deliver on time and meet our targets for both organizations and ultimately deliver on time. Now, if that happens in the board, it will reciprocate, or it will cascade down to the next level of management. If the management recognizes the blame and do not appreciate the blame statements, it will create a better culture to the next level of management. Ultimately, it boils down from top down, from the executives to the senior management to the middle management to the ultimately to the delivery teams, that our management and our goals and of the organization do not support blaming. Whenever we make a blame, people start looking funny towards you, saying, why are you blaming the other person? Why can't we work together? So it has to happen from top down, and so that's one. And then from bottom up, that's the other concept. When I say bottom up, the example we discussed earlier about the psychometric testing, and that's great. You can have the personality profiles done and then have some coaches in to help the culture develop further. Unfortunately, there is no silver bullet. There is no easy answer to changing culture. It takes time. However, there is a dedication that is required from the top management, that they are willing to spend the resources. And change, especially a positive change of responsible culture within an organization, it's an ideal, it's a perfection, it's a goal that every organization generally has, but they do not recognize that. Because without this, there will be blame, there will be lack of delivery of projects, there will be lack of progress, and all those things are ultimately tied to personalities. So it's a long answer to your short question or a statement, but my understanding is you need to have a top-down and bottom-up approach, and you need external help for that. Ali?
Well, thank you very much, Brother Naveed. That really brings us towards the end of the webinar. I would like to thank you on behalf of Mile for this wonderful presentation and a very interesting topic that you've chosen. Any concluding remarks that you would like to give before we dismiss out?
Yes. If you have any challenge, if you think any scenario that I've mentioned doesn't make sense or makes perfect sense, please do write to me. I've given the email address on the screen. I think the information will be shared by Ali as well. Feel free to just I can arrange Skype sessions or telephonic conversation. I would like to know more, because the more scenarios I come across, the better and stronger I can make this model. Inshallah, I intend to present these things at international conferences to make sure that we understand and recognize the recommendations from the Quran and the greater benefit of the society.
Well, a very good cause. Thank you very much, Brother Naveed, and thank you all of those who participated in this webinar and made it an interactive experience for all of us with your interesting questions. We are recording this webinar, so please stay tuned to community.mile.org for accessing the recorded version, as well as to download the soft copy of the presentation, which will be updated in the next couple of days. Once again,